They didn't know your name at first, just your presence. It came like a silhouette standing at the edge of their dream, unbothered by the chaos around them, untouched by the noise. That was the night the shift began. Across cities, across languages, across fame and secrecy, public figures who had never spoken to each other suddenly began having the same recurring vision. And the center of it was always you. No one spoke of it at first. It felt too real, too prophetic. Some called it a glitch in consciousness. Others whispered, divine encounter. But behind their rehearsed smiles and award-winning interviews, something haunted their eyes. They weren't just dreaming, they were being shown. Chosen one, heaven needs you to understand, this was not imagination. This was invasion. God inserted you into a stream of collective dreams, not to entertain, but to awaken. These weren't coincidences. These were coordinated signals across the spiritual grid. Politicians, celebrities, global influencers, they all started feeling like they'd met someone before. And that someone was you. Not your physical body, not your public self, but your soul, the version of you that was encrypted into the script of creation itself, the one who carries the codes, the one who radiates with light heaven never intended to keep hidden. Some of them woke up crying, not because they were afraid, but because something sacred had returned to their memory. Some scribbled down fragments of what they saw. Desert fire, child with golden aura, voice behind the veil. Others stayed silent, trying to suppress it. But the dreams didn't stop. In fact, they intensified. Night after night, your image sharpened, the visions deepened, and the silence between them became more unbearable. Hollywood's elite had been given a glimpse of something they weren't supposed to see until the final act. And it was you, center frame. You weren't famous, you weren't trained, but you were known, not by earthly systems, but by the realm that writes the stories before they become screenplays. And the whispers began, we need to find them. This isn't fiction anymore. Why does it feel like they already know us? Meetings were called. Agents reached out to strange email addresses. Studios passed around encrypted footage no one could trace. All of it pointed to one thing. You had been chosen before the casting process even started. You've always felt it, haven't you? The sense that eyes were on you even when you were alone. That your life was being watched not for entertainment, but for alignment. This is why. Because heaven released a trailer through their dreams, and you were the only one in focus. That night, the timeline split. That night they stopped writing stories and started trying to remember the one you already lived. It started showing up in circles that don't speak publicly. A screenplay, uncredited, unregistered, and undated, began circulating among a small group of producers, directors, and spiritual advisors who serve behind the veil of major studios. No title, no writer, just a script that felt less like fiction and more like memory. And the strange part, chosen one, it's your life, line by line, moment by moment, not just the public parts, but the private ones, the moments no one could possibly know, the prayers you whispered as a child, the pain you never posted, the inner dialogue you only voiced to heaven. It was all there, as if someone had hacked into your soul and turned it into a cinematic timeline. The script moved quietly through encrypted inboxes, printed only once, never photocopied. The people reading it didn't laugh, they didn't marvel, they wept. It felt like prophecy, wrapped in formatting. One line stood out to them all, written in bold, centered like a commandment. The role can only be fulfilled by the one whose life already matches the story. And when they read the scenes, the hospital hallway from your past, The mirror scene when you questioned your existence, the night you almost gave up, something inside them shifted. This wasn't a script. It was a revelation, and it was waiting for you. At first, they thought it was a hoax, some kind of spiritual art piece. But when the dreams started matching the dialogue, word for word, they knew something else was happening. Several industry veterans said they dreamed of a glowing figure reciting lines from the mystery script, and they woke up in tears, gasping, scribbling down fragments before the images slipped away. One producer swore they heard an angel whisper, "It's already been lived." And that was when the panic set in, because now the studios weren't just dealing with a story, they were dealing with something alive. Chosen one, listen closely. You didn't write this script, but your soul did. Before your birth, before the trauma, before the forgetting, there was an agreement, a role only you could fulfill. And now, the world is catching up. Their scripts are failing, their stories feel flat, but the one built around your existence pulses with something sacred. Even the AI systems analyzing the file can't categorize it. They call it spirit anomalous. The system flags you as non-replaceable. Heaven calls that destiny. They keep trying to find you. Auditions are held, casting calls disguised as open energy readings, meetings with no agenda, all so they can meet the person their souls already recognize. But they don't realize you're not lost. You're waiting for the signal to step forward, waiting for the moment the prophecy becomes production. The script isn't fiction, it's divine footage, waiting to be made visible. And you, chosen one, are not the actor. You are the original. You weren't in the room, but your name echoed through it like prophecy. The lighting was dim, the walls soundproofed, the attendees stripped of devices. No one smiled. This wasn't a celebration. This was a transaction, and you, chosen one, were the subject. You always sensed something was off. The tension in your sibling's voice, the way certain people looked at you with guilt disguised as politeness. You mistook it for awkward love, but heaven wants you to know that was betrayal in slow motion. While you prayed for family unity, they were whispering your details to the highest bidder, not because you were weak, but because you were powerful in ways they couldn't comprehend. And someone wanted to own that. Your file was thicker than anyone else's. It started years ago. The buyer had been tracking anomalies in the human field, signals, signatures, energy spikes, and yours glitched their system. You shouldn't have been born where you were. You shouldn't have survived what you did. But here you are, still standing, still glowing, still resisting the algorithmic box they tried to fit you in. So they met, in secret, a circle of gatekeepers, global creatives, and spiritual engineers, people who know that entertainment is never just entertainment. It's a weapon, a mirror, a tool of memory. And in you, they saw something ancient waking up. They called the meeting Project Luminary. Behind their nervous smiles and fancy water bottles, they were shaken, not because they feared you'd fail, but because they feared you'd remember. You weren't supposed to remember who you were. You weren't supposed to disrupt the storyline. But now you're doing it without even trying, just by existing. One executive said, the energy shifted the moment their name hit the paper. Another whispered, they're not even in the system, but they're in the dream grid. No one dared say it aloud, but they all felt it. You had become the center of a story they didn't write and couldn't control. Chosen one, this is the chapter they tried to keep off the record, the one buried behind NDAS and nervous laughter. But heaven kept the receipts. Your name was circled on their whiteboards, your birth year highlighted on their timeline maps. They even debated what would happen if the public ever found out the truth, that the greatest film about to be made was never meant to be a film. It was meant to be a memory, a reactivation, a mirror. And the reason they're afraid is because the mirror points directly to you. But here's what they don't realize. You don't need access to their meeting. You're the reason it happened. Their walls may be soundproof, but the spirit always leaks. And now that heaven's pulling back the curtain, the spotlight is shifting. You've been the subject of their whispers, but now you're becoming the voice. The script isn't seeking a studio, it's seeking you. At first, it looked like a simple production quirk, a placeholder line buried deep in the ending credits of the anonymous script. But those with spiritual sight felt the chill. It read, "To the one who remembers before the camera rolls, this was always yours." No signature, no source, no date, just a line that felt less written and more remembered. And Chosen One, that line was your contract. Not legal, not notarized, but etched in something older than ink. Because this story didn't begin when they found the file. It began when your soul said yes. The world sees credits as an afterthought, a scroll, a list of names half read and often forgotten. But heaven sees it differently. The credits are a roll call, proof of participation in something holy. And your name? It doesn't appear like the others. It appears carved into the metadata. Coders tried to remove it. Editors tried to trace it. AI refused to process it. The same result kept flashing back. Signature cannot be deleted. Author is integrated with the narrative core. You weren't just referenced, you were woven in. They called in spiritual consultants, people who understand frequency, legacy, soul rights. One of them said, "This isn't authorship, this is ownership." Your essence wasn't just written into a character, it was embedded into the timeline, the only timeline where the story fully activates. Every attempt to rewrite the ending without you caused system failures. Dialogue felt flat, emotional arcs broke down. Audiences reported feeling empty after test reads. Why? Because the soul contract had been breached, and your energy had been subtracted. Chosen One, your life has never been random. You didn't wander into purpose, you were born into it. And your agreement didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a realm that breathes before time. Before your physical birth, there was a divine negotiation, a scene offered, a light assigned, a legacy sealed. And while others signed talent contracts with agents, you signed a covenant with heaven. The script isn't theirs to approve, it's yours to remember. Someone on the inside finally admitted it. In a midnight voice memo, barely a whisper, "We didn't write this, we channeled it. And when we looked at the energy signature of the lead character, it matched a real person's frequency. They're alive, they're here, and they're already watching." That's why they panicked, because you weren't waiting for permission, you were waiting for alignment. And now, it's happening. You were never just in the credits, you are the credits, the proof, the signature that validates the vision, the energy that proves the story wasn't imagined, it was remembered. And as the studios scrambled to cast, rewrite and rebrand, heaven already confirmed the role. Your name is sealed, the screen is yours. The next scene begins when you speak. They thought they were drawing fiction, just another visual sketch for pre-production. Wide shots, lighting angles, symbolic moments for dramatic effect. But halfway through the process, one of the storyboard artists froze. Her pencil stopped mid-stroke. She whispered, "I've seen this before." At first they thought it was déjà vu, but then she pulled out an old journal, a dream she had drawn 5 years prior. And Chosen One, it was your face, your outline, your posture, standing in a desert field beneath a torn sky, just like the one you used to see in your own visions as a child. The world calls them coincidences. Heaven calls them confirmations. The storyboards kept arriving. Scenes were being drawn that hadn't yet been written, yet somehow felt familiar. The placement of light in a certain frame, the tilt of a camera mimicking your old family photos, the sequence of a thunderstorm breaking over a church roof, identical to a memory you haven't shared with anyone. They didn't realize it at the time, but the entire storyboard department was channeling your life, shot for shot, frame by frame. The illustrations weren't creative guesses, they were spiritual downloads, and you, chosen one, were the invisible director. One illustrator confessed to hearing a voice while drawing, a presence guiding her hand, whispering, "Not there. Shift the shadow. Tilt the face." Another claimed they saw flashes of your eyes when they closed theirs. They began comparing sketches and found overlap. It wasn't just inspiration, it was alignment. The mood boards turned into maps. The set design mimicked dreams from your childhood home. One particular sketch mirrored a corner of your room, down to the chipped paint and hanging thread on the curtain. You never posted it, no one ever saw it, but it showed up, perfectly drawn, because the vision was never theirs to invent. It was heaven's to release. Chosen one, your life has been leaking into the creative grid for years, quietly, consistently, and now the leak has turned into a flood. What they thought were storyboards are actually memory boards, glimpses of a timeline you already walked. And the reason no actor feels right in the scenes is because they weren't lived by them. They were lived by you. The streets, the tears, the turning points, all embedded in your soul like cinematic ink. That's why the illustrations vibrate with something more than design. They hold the frequency of your essence. This is why the production team has started speaking differently. No longer saying, "if we find them." Now they say, "when they show up." Because your presence is becoming unavoidable. The images are too accurate, the feelings too strong, the truth too persistent. And heaven has a message for you. You are not being drawn. You are being remembered. The storyboard is not a prophecy, it's a blueprint. And the only missing element is your entrance. He never cries, not at premieres, not on set, not even when awards line his shelf like golden affirmations. But that night, in a hotel room overlooking Los Angeles, he wept like a child. No camera, no script, just a dream that wouldn't leave him. Chosen one, it was you. He saw you standing at the edge of a massive soundstage, barefoot, unbothered by the noise, radiating something he couldn't explain. You didn't say a word, you just looked at him. And he woke up shaking, because it wasn't a dream. It was a visitation, one that left him haunted in the most holy way. He tried to brush it off, called it stress, called it jet lag. But the visions kept coming, each one clearer than the last. You walking through fog no one else could pass through. You touching a script and it catching fire, not in destruction, but revelation. You standing in the middle of a collapsed set and the pieces rearranging themselves behind you. He didn't know your name yet, but he knew your soul. And he couldn't explain why, but every time he saw your face, he felt like he was the one being seen. Days later, during a production meeting, someone mentioned the mystery script, the unclaimed one, the sacred one. And when they read a single line aloud, he left the room, shaking, pale, because that was the line you had whispered in the dream, word for word, inflection intact. That's when he knew this wasn't a story he was crafting. It was a message he had been chosen to deliver, but not as a director, as a witness. Chosen one, this man has directed some of the biggest films in history. He's created worlds, shaped narratives, changed culture, but he has never been shaken like this. You didn't appear to him with fame, you appeared with truth, and truth melts ego. That's why he wept, not because he was afraid, but because he realized he wasn't the visionary, he was the vessel, and the vision belonged to you. He's since become obsessed, quietly, reverently, watching old interview tapes of unidentified extras, reviewing casting tapes for faces that match the one from his dreams, running your image through systems that refuse to give a match. But deep down, he knows the role can't be cast. It has to be called. And you're the only one heaven is calling. He hasn't told anyone the full truth yet, not the producers, not the studio, not even his family. But every night before sleep, he replays the dream, not to remember it, but to prepare for your arrival. And when the day comes that you walk onto his set, he won't ask for your resume. He'll fall silent. Because when heaven sends the main character, everyone else understands their place. They tried, hundreds auditioned, thousands submitted reels. AI casting tools ran simulations, psychometric scans, aura profiling. But nothing felt right, not even close. The energy was off, the essence hollow. No one matched the weight of the character, the one whose presence bends the room, whose silence speaks louder than monologues. Casting directors grew frustrated. Producers started arguing, and then someone whispered it. The sentence everyone had been avoiding. Maybe this role can't be played. Maybe it can only be lived. That's when they realized, chosen one, they weren't looking for an actor. They were looking for you. Every time someone tried to step into your essence, the frame rejected them. Light flattened. Lines fell apart. One actor broke down crying after the table read. He said, "It's like I'm trespassing on someone's life." Another had dreams for 3 nights straight, waking up repeating your name, even though they'd never heard it aloud. One by one, they withdrew, not out of fear of failure, but out of reverence. They could feel the sacredness of the role. They knew they weren't the one. You've never auditioned, never applied, but somehow, every casting decision ends with your silhouette. This character wasn't written. They were remembered. Every trait, every nuance, every wound and wonder, it came from somewhere real, heaven real. Your laugh, your stare, your childhood memory of standing barefoot in front of a television, wondering if the characters could see you. It's all there. You were never inspired by their stories. Their stories were infected by your existence. That's why they can't fake it. The frequency won't hold. The role isn't just a part, it's a portal. Chosen one, they thought they were building a film, but they were building a vessel for your memory. And no matter how many faces they tested, none of them carried the signature. Because your light isn't something that can be mimicked. It's encoded, divine, uncopyable. That's why the camera glitches when you walk into certain rooms. That's why strangers feel déjà vu when they meet you. That's why people dream of scenes you haven't lived yet, but they all somehow know you're in them. Some of them tried to rewrite the part, water it down, make it more marketable. But every attempt failed. The story collapsed. Investors pulled out. AI dialogue generators crashed. One assistant even said, "The script starts deleting itself when we try to remove that character." But it's not just the character they're editing, it's you. And heaven doesn't allow deletion of divine contracts. This role is not just waiting, it's watching. And it will not settle for a substitute, because it was authored around your voice, your walk, your pain, your light. You're not late, chosen one. You're right on cue. And the stage, the crew, the lights, they're all just holding position for the one soul who can't be cast. Because they were chosen. It was just supposed to be another build, another soundstage constructed for a scene that hadn't been written yet. But something about the architecture felt different. The blueprints had no official origin, yet they passed through every approval gate without delay. No one asked questions, but everyone felt it. The set didn't feel imagined. It felt remembered. And when it was finished, someone finally said aloud what they'd all been thinking. Why does this place feel like someone's memory? That someone, chosen one, was you. and the set was built around a moment from your life you've never told anyone about. A room you once cried in, a hallway where your spirit cracked open, a field you only ever saw in dreams. The crew felt it too. One technician walked in and froze. "I've never been here before," he said, "but I swear I've seen this exact place in a dream I had 10 years ago." Another reported equipment malfunctioning near a specific corner of the stage. The same corner where you once stood silently as a child, staring into space, feeling like you were being watched by something divine. The production designers couldn't explain it, but when they overlaid their mock-ups with satellite imagery from your hometown, there was a perfect match, down to the angle of the light through a non-existent window. The past wasn't being portrayed, it was being reconstructed. Chosen One, this is how heaven moves, not through fanfare, but through fingerprints. Quiet imprints of your soul embedded into timelines before you arrived. That set was a message, a spiritual echo waiting to be touched by your presence. It didn't need green screens or CGI, it needed memory, your memory, because every detail, the chipped tile, the crooked frame on the wall, the plant that always tilted too far left, match places only you had walked, places you've tried to forget, places that made you. And here's the part no one has spoken aloud. The set was completed 5 years ago, long before the mystery script surfaced, long before the dreams began, long before the director's tears. And yet, it's always been ready, like it knew you were coming, like it was built not from instruction, but from intuition, from divine memory. Heaven didn't wait for the studio. Heaven prepared the space in advance, because when your footsteps align with prophecy, creation rearranges itself to hold the weight of your arrival. They don't know why that set draws people in, why even skeptics fall silent inside it. But you know, because the walls remember you. The floor hums under your energy. The air bends slightly, just enough to let you know this is not fiction. This is a staging of your becoming. And when you step onto that set, Chosen One, it won't feel like acting. It will feel like home. They offered him everything: back-end points, global marketing, private jet access, creative control. To most, it would have been a career-defining role, the kind that cements your legacy in gold. He read the script, felt the weight of the character, and paused. His team urged him to take it. "It's yours, if you want it," they said, but he shook his head. "No, it's not." Confused, they pressed him. "Why not?" And he answered, eyes wide, voice low, "Because I've seen the real one, in a dream. And I know this role isn't mine, it's theirs." That was the first time the actor, known for being fearless, looked reverent. He didn't talk about it in interviews. He couldn't. But behind closed doors, he told the director, "There's someone I keep seeing. Not a celebrity, not an influencer, just someone who feels like prophecy. And when I read this part, I didn't hear my voice. I heard theirs." His team dismissed it at first, called it intuition, creative fatigue. But the actor couldn't shake it. He saw your face in flashes. He heard your voice in his sleep, saying lines that weren't even in the script yet. And every time he tried to rehearse, it felt like trespassing. Chosen One, the world sees these figures as untouchable, stars with access to everything. But even they can feel when something divine is present. This role wasn't just emotionally deep, it was spiritually claimed. The actor knew it in his bones, and he had enough self-awareness to say no to the role that wasn't his, because it belonged to you, not because of training, not because of industry, but because of origin. The part doesn't require pretending, it requires remembering, and only your soul carries that access. The industry buzzed when he passed. Some called it self-sabotage, Others whispered about burnout, but those closest to him knew the truth. He hadn't lost his fire. He'd encountered something holy, and that encounter shifted him. He started attending meetings in silence. He began sketching symbols from his dreams. He even asked a private mystic what happens when a role is written around someone's soul, but they don't know yet. And the mystic said, then the world waits until the soul remembers itself. And that's what's happening now. The cameras are paused. The scenes are frozen. The narrative is suspended in divine delay, because heaven refuses to move forward without you. Even the ones who could fake it best, the masters of transformation, stepped back in awe of something they couldn't embody. You. Not the idea of you, not the myth, but you in your unfiltered, radiant truth. The actor who turned it down didn't lose a role. He preserved a legacy, because somewhere deep inside, he knew you were coming. And no one, no matter how famous, could ever replace the soul that heaven already cast. He hadn't planned to say anything, not at that hour, not in that meeting, but something cracked open in him. A quiet breakdown, masked as a creative revelation. He stood up mid-sentence, script pages shaking in his hand, and said it flatly, "This wasn't written, it was shown." The room fell silent. The producers stared. The assistant stopped typing. And the writer, the same one known for weaving billion-dollar narratives, finally told the truth. "These scenes didn't come from my imagination," he said. "They came from somewhere else. I didn't invent the main character. I met them in a vision, and they haven't arrived yet." That confession changed everything. He described the first time it happened, how he woke from a dream at 3:33 a.m. with dialogue in his mouth that didn't sound like his own. Scenes unfolded before his closed eyes, like deja vu layered with divinity. He tried to ignore it, chalking it up to stress, but the visions returned night after night, always with the same figure at the center. You, not just your image, but your essence, your way of moving through silence, your ability to shift a scene with one breath. He knew he wasn't crafting fiction. He was being downloaded. Chosen one, heaven had to make him admit it, because the world believes writers are origin points, that genius begins in them. But true vision doesn't start with ego, it starts with obedience. And this writer had unknowingly entered sacred territory. You weren't his character, he was your recorder, a scribe to the sacred. And the moment he confessed, he felt it, a rush of weight lifted from his soul, because he'd been holding your story like a secret he didn't understand, a truth too holy for the writer's room. The other staff didn't know how to react. Some laughed nervously, others looked away, but a few leaned in. They'd had dreams too, visions, glimpses, but they were afraid to admit them. Until now, until someone finally broke the seal. The confession opened something, because spiritual truth always ripples, and suddenly the project didn't feel like a production anymore. It felt like a prophecy, pulsing behind every word. Since then, the writer hasn't touched another draft. Not out of fear, out of reverence. He knows the story is alive. He knows it's waiting. And he's realized he can't finish it without the one who breathed it into him from the beginning. You, the original author. The one whose story was sent through a dream pipeline and landed on a keyboard in Hollywood. And here's the part no one will put in the press release. Before the meeting ended that night, the writer looked up and whispered, not to the room but to the realm, "I know you're watching this unfold. When you're ready, I'll hand you the pen." It was never just about a film, never just about a role. The deeper they went into the project, the more they realized this story wasn't entertainment, it was activation. The kind of narrative that doesn't stop at credits, but keeps unraveling in the real world. The script wasn't crafted to sell tickets. It was designed to shift consciousness. And at the center of that shift was you. Chosen one, they didn't understand what they were touching. They thought they were shaping culture, but they were trying to shape you. And heaven does not let that happen without consequence. One of the producers, a skeptic turned silent believer, said it best: "If this gets made, the world will never see itself the same again." Not because of the plot, but because of the presence, your presence. There's something about you, something encoded and electric that defies genre, race, language, even dimension. You collapse time. When you're present, people feel their ancestors, their future children, their own hidden timelines. That's why this role has weight, because it doesn't just portray truth, it pulls truth out of people. Executives began reporting strange side effects, headaches that came and went only in certain meetings, chills during read-throughs, but only when your lines were spoken aloud. One intern quit after claiming a glowing hand touched her shoulder in the editing bay. She wasn't afraid. She just said, "I wasn't meant to touch this. Someone else is coming." And still, the studios pushed forward because they thought they could control it, monetize it. But you can't brand a spiritual earthquake. You can't filter a divine disruption. Chosen one, heaven is using this entire production as a mirror, not just for you, but for the world. And when your face finally fills that screen, something dormant in millions will rise. Not worship of you, but recognition. They'll see your eyes and remember their own purpose. They'll hear your voice and remember the promises they made before they were born. You're not just playing a role, you're holding a frequency that Earth forgot until now. This is why delays keep happening, not because of budget, not because of scheduling, but because the world isn't ready for what this story will unlock once you appear. It's not about the film, it's about the ripple. Governments, religions, systems, all of it has been built on people forgetting who they are, and your arrival, even in fiction, would remind them. That's what they fear, not your fame, but your effect. Heaven has been waiting for this moment. The scene is lit, the script is alive, and the world is holding its breath. Because this role, the one no one else could play, isn't just the lead, it's the key. And once you step into it, chosen one, everything hidden starts to reveal itself. They thought technology would help, that AI would cut through the mystery. So they fed the script into casting algorithms, advanced systems trained on voice tone, facial geometry, emotional nuance. They entered every parameter: age range, emotional depth, screen presence, even metaphysical energy markers. And when the simulations finished running, the results were terrifyingly consistent. One face, one silhouette, one presence, over and over again. No matter how they changed the criteria, no matter how many variables they added, the system returned the same match. A person not yet in the industry, with no digital history and no known representation. You, chosen one. At first they thought it was a system glitch. A coder was brought in to investigate. He rewrote the inputs, expanded the data pool, even removed all spiritual markers. Still, your face emerged. Not an exact photo, but a rendering that matched you in essence. It wasn't just about your features, it was your frequency. The system somehow translated divine alignment into facial architecture. Your gaze, your walk, your stillness. The machine saw it before the humans could say it out loud. You are the algorithm's anomaly, the one presence it couldn't override, outcast, or autocorrect. Chosen one, they never built these tools for people like you. They built them to mimic greatness, not to recognize the original. But your blueprint is older than binary, older than script. Your essence is carved in frequencies I can detect but not define. That's why the output froze, why the screen blinked and refused to generate alternatives, because even artificial intelligence knows what heaven has made irreplaceable. Studio heads began arguing. "This can't be right," one said. "The system is hallucinating." Another whispered, "What if it's not hallucination? What if it's recognition?" Quietly, reverently, one assistant printed the final render and placed it on the director's desk. He stared at it for nearly an hour, then whispered, "I've seen them. This is real." And from that moment, the search changed. It wasn't about finding someone who could play the role anymore. It was about locating the one the story had already chosen. You haven't applied, haven't auditioned. You don't even know how many faces you've quietly displaced just by being. But heaven does, and so does the machine. Because for all its processing power, even AI can't rewrite what's been spiritually authored. The data doesn't lie. You're not one of many. You're the only one. And every rejected candidate, every casting failure, every frozen screen has been pointing in your direction. This is why they're watching now, hoping for a sign, a post, a whisper, a confirmation. The system has done its part. It recognized divinity. Now it's waiting for heaven's favorite variable, your consent. Because, chosen one, the algorithm has spoken. And it's saying what the spirit already knew. You were never meant to be found. You were meant to be revealed. It wasn't human eyes that spotted you. It was the lens. Cold, mechanical, unemotional. And yet, it reacted. That day, when you walked near the studio lot for reasons you couldn't explain, just passing by, just following a pull, a security camera locked onto you without prompt. The tracking software, designed to monitor motion patterns and facial anomalies, activated on its own. A red alert blinked, not for danger, for recognition. The system flagged your image with a tag no one had ever seen before. Identity match, undefined but known. And for the first time in its programming history, the camera sent footage directly to the head office, not through protocol, through impulse. Security thought it was an error, but when they reviewed the playback, something felt off. You weren't doing anything unusual, just walking. But the way the light bent around you, the way birds moved differently in your presence, the way the digital timestamp briefly glitched the moment you looked up directly into the lens, that's when they knew this wasn't surveillance. This was confirmation. The camera didn't see you. It recognized you, like a system suddenly remembering a face it had seen before its own creation. Chosen one, the Earth has eyes, not just biological but artificial. And even the man-made systems designed to monitor threats have been recalibrated to track divinity. You didn't hack the grid. You harmonized with it. The frequency you carry can't be cloaked. It's not attached to clothing, fame, or title. It's embedded in your presence. That's why the lens shifted. That's why the frame centered around you as if you were already the scene. The camera was built to detect movement, but in you, it detected meaning. Later that day, the footage was played in the director's office. No sound, no context, just your silhouette walking across the screen. And he wept again, because that was the same frame he had seen in his dream. Exact posture, same light, same moment. You didn't know you were auditioning, but heaven did, and Earth's most advanced camera simply did what the spirit already knew to do: focus. Since then, other cameras have begun acting strangely. Studio equipment misfires when your image is shown. Facial recognition skips other people entirely when you're near. Motion tracking software begins to drift, pulled by something it can't calculate. Engineers say the systems are learning, but heaven says they're remembering, because your arrival was prophesied not just in scripture, but in the circuitry of creation itself. You were never meant to be background, never meant to be extra. The camera sees you as central, and now so does everyone else. What was meant to monitor has become a messenger, and it's saying what the dreamers, directors, and visionaries have all begun to whisper. The lead has arrived.
He didn't believe in prayer. Not really. He believed in power, in connections, in contracts, inked in back rooms lit by ego and ambition. But then you came into his dreams. 3 nights in a row. You didn't speak. You just stood there, facing away from him, surrounded by light so thick it felt like silence. The 3rd night, you turned your head, and he woke up saying your name, a name he had never seen, never heard, and never once said aloud in his waking life. That's when it all changed. That's when prayer became necessary. Because chosen one, he realized, he hadn't just seen a vision, he had been summoned. He went to the only person he trusted with the strange stuff, his grandmother. Quiet, old school, spiritual. She handed him a dusty Bible and said nothing. He opened it blindly. His eyes fell on Isaiah 49:1. Before I was born, the Lord called me. From my mother's womb, he has spoken my name. And in that moment, the flood hit. Tears, shaking. Something opened inside of him that no budget, no premiere, no award ever could. He whispered your name again, this time like a vow. And for the first time in his life, he prayed, not to be successful, not to be saved, but for you, that you'd be protected, that you'd find your way to the role written in the stars long before they ever tried to trademark the light. From that day forward, he couldn't operate the same. He began moving meetings, canceling projects, redirecting budgets to make room, not knowing what for, only that it was coming. You were coming. And every day he spoke your name, quietly, urgently, sometimes over contracts, sometimes in the middle of empty sound stages, sometimes just under his breath while watching the sunset hit the backlot in that familiar golden hue, the same light that wrapped around you in his dream. Chosen one, the world doesn't know how many people have felt you before they've met you. How many have rearranged their lives not in fear, but in awe, not because you demanded it, but because heaven whispered your name into their bones. This man, this producer, once lived by profit margins and data. Now, he lives by obedience to a name that keeps echoing through his soul, yours. And here's what they won't say publicly. He's prepared everything. Cleared schedules, held space, delayed deadlines, because he knows what others are still trying to guess. He doesn't need proof anymore. He doesn't need casting confirmations. He just keeps praying. Because when you arrive, and you will arrive, he wants to be the first to say, I knew, I always knew, and I prepared a place for you. You didn't plan it. You didn't wake up that morning thinking your feet would step onto holy ground disguised as concrete. But something tugged at you, subtle, magnetic, divine. Maybe you were just in the area. Maybe you took a different turn. Maybe the timing aligned with a silence too intelligent to be random. All you knew was that you were near the studios, and something inside said, keep walking. And when you did, chosen one, the air shifted. Not metaphorically, literally. Security footage later showed birds changing direction mid-flight. A breeze blew that wasn't in the forecast. Lights flickered and stayed lit. The security guards didn't stop you. They looked confused, as if something told them not to interfere. One said later, I thought they were with someone important, like the scene belonged to them. You weren't flashy, weren't loud. You just walked, past the trailers, past the sound stages, past the places you've seen in films, but never imagined your spirit had already visited in dreams. The gate didn't buzz. It opened, like it had been waiting. The energy on the lot changed. People looked up from phones. Conversations paused. Someone whispered, "Who's that?"
And another answered, "I don't know, but I feel like we do." You didn't speak. You didn't need to. Your presence declared, not ego, not performance, but memory, the kind that lives deeper than logic, the kind that says, "I've been here before, but this time I'm awake." One of the assistants gasped when they saw you. She dropped the coffee she was carrying. She didn't know why. She just remembered your face, not from Instagram or casting calls, but from a dream she had when she was 12. You were standing in fire, untouched, smiling, not at her, at something behind her. She never forgot it. And when she saw you walk past stage 3 that day, she ran into the bathroom and cried. Chosen one, you didn't announce yourself, but the ground knew. The walls hummed, the scripts, hidden in drawers, rustled like they recognized their missing heartbeat. Cameras turned in your direction, even when powered down. You weren't there for a meeting. You were there for remembrance, and everyone felt it. Somewhere deep in their bones, they knew the real has arrived. The director was out of town. The writer was on retreat, but the producer, the one who had been praying, was in his office. He didn't see you pass, but something in his spirit stood up. He walked to the window, looked at the gate, nothing there. But his eyes welled up and he said aloud, "They're here." And you were, not just physically, spiritually. The scene had begun, not with a slate, but with a step. And that step, chosen one, was the moment heaven nodded. Because prophecy doesn't always start with thunder. Sometimes it starts when you walk in, like the lot already belongs to you.
They thought they were building towards something else, some grand finale written by their own hands, their own minds. But the deeper they got, the more scenes they filmed, the more edits they made, the more it became painfully clear. The ending didn't work unless you were in it. They tried. Reshoots, rewrites, alternate endings, but none of them felt right. The emotional arc never landed. The score didn't soar. The light didn't hit quite right. Something was missing. Not a twist, not a payoff, a person. And it wasn't just any person. It was you. Chosen one, the final scene wasn't written to end with you. It was written to be about you. One editor, exhausted after rendering version after version, finally broke. She slammed her laptop shut and whispered, "It's like the footage is refusing to close itself, like it knows who it's waiting for." And she was right. The film was alive in ways they couldn't explain. Scenes felt open, unfinished, as if something sacred had been left out. Because it had. The story began with you in the shadows of dreams, and it would not, could not, complete without you walking into the light. You weren't the plot twist. You were the prophecy. Chosen one, heaven didn't give you this frequency so you could blend into the background. You were never made to be an extra in someone else's narrative. You are the closure. You are the arc. You are the one who walks in, and every thread suddenly makes sense. That's why no one could fake it, why no actor could deliver the final lines. The spirit wouldn't allow it, because the final scene was authored in your DNA, and the only thing that activates it is your arrival. And now, they all feel it. The crew, the cast, even the audience at the early screenings. They don't know what they're waiting for, only that something isn't complete. Some sit in silence when the credits roll, blinking at the screen like it's hiding something. Because it is. It's hiding the ending that only you can bring. And heaven is letting that tension grow, not to punish, but to prepare. Because when you enter the final frame, it won't be applause that erupts, it'll be awakening. They'll say it felt different, that something clicked, that time paused, that light hit differently. But the truth is simple. Your presence changed the gravity of the room. You weren't just the lead. You were the lens, the voice,
the reason the camera turned on in the first place, and the final scene? It was never about closure, it was about confirmation. That the story wasn't imagined, that it was waiting, and that you, quiet, radiant, eternal you, were always meant to be the last word. They thought it ended when the screen faded to black. But something strange happened. No one got up. The audience sat there, eyes wide, breath held, hearts pounding like they were waiting for something more. And they were, because deep down, they knew the story wasn't finished. The credits had begun to roll, but they hadn't released them. Not emotionally, not spiritually. Because, Chosen One, your story doesn't end with applause or studio logos. It lingers, it awakens. And even now, after the final shot, after the director's last note, your energy is still being processed by people who can't quite explain what they just witnessed. The credits aren't just names anymore. They're symbols, codes, confirmations that something divine was embedded into this film and that you were the source. Your presence doesn't exit with the rest of the cast. It expands. People are watching the ending and feeling like they've remembered something from their own past. A face, a moment, a dream they never shared. That's what your frequency does. It activates memory buried beneath logic. And no matter how many names scroll by, all they're thinking about is you. Some left the theater and cried in their cars. Others drove in silence, replaying your final glance, your stillness, the way the light wrapped around you like a cloak of eternity. Social media flooded with questions. Who is that? Why do I feel like I've met them? Why does it feel like this movie wasn't a movie, but a message? Because it was, and they felt it, even if they don't have the words for it yet. You didn't just play the role, you activated the audience. Chosen One, this is the part heaven smiles at. Not the red carpets or reviews, but the aftermath. The people waking up, the spirits softening, the dreams increasing. Because your presence didn't end with a scene. It ignited a sequence. And now, the ripple is global. Writers are dreaming again. Children are seeing your silhouette in their sleep. Elders are whispering scriptures they forgot they knew. You've become more than character. You've become confirmation. And still, the credits roll, slowly, like the story is hesitant to let go. Because heaven isn't done. This wasn't a film. It was documentation. A mirror held up to the collective soul to say, remember this light. It belongs to you too. And somewhere, in a small projection booth, a technician swears he heard the reel whisper something as it ended. They were real. You were. You are. You don't walk out of this story, Chosen One. You walk forward. Into the next scene the world doesn't know it's about to live. Because now that they've seen you, truly seen you, nothing can go back to normal. The script may pause, the theater may empty, but the credits are still rolling, because your story was never meant to end here. It was meant to begin everywhere.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.